My girlfriend and I broke up after she became psychotic after a brain surgery. Apologies in advance for the wall of text. A lot of detail I feel the need to get off my chest. My ex, 28F, and I, 31M, had been dating for over 4 years, and lived together for 3 years. For most of our relationship, she was in grad school, and we had just moved to a new city together after she graduated. Last year in June, she was diagnosed with a low-grade 2 brain tumor in the back of her head. She got surgery to remove it in August, which was only supposed to impact vision and balance mildly. The recovery period was 6 to 8 weeks with minimal forecasted implications. Immediately after the operation, things seemed fine and it was successful. 2 weeks into the recovery, she began to sleep less and less and became increasingly irritable. I was her primary caretaker as we both had just moved to a new city and were far from friends and family. She began to treat me with increasing disdain and became extremely short-tempered. I became frustrated as I was trying to take care of her needs, walk our dogs, turn down the lights to her preference, make her food, etc., only to be reprimanded for not being fast enough or getting in her way. I dismissed it as a side effect of drugs/recovery/ etc. One day about 3 weeks into recovery, she got mad at me for responding to her in a monotone way regarding something mundane, turning off the fans in the bathroom because of the noise. She locked herself in the bathroom and came out with a 5-page letter breaking up with me, without stating any detail about why in the letter. Mostly full of "I love yous and I care about you, but this isn't working and we need to end things." She told me I had to move out of our apartment and she would buy all my furniture, since I furnished the apartment when we first moved in. She could not afford to do this yet insisted on it, despite being only a few weeks into brain surgery recovery and clearly needing someone to be there to physically care for her. She had not slept for 3 full nights prior to this happening. She stayed up all night scrolling on social media, buying things off the internet, and obsessively doing other things of that nature. She started a new Instagram account as she had delusions that God had told her to reach out to people as an influencer and help them. She would ignore my pleas to tell her to try to get sleep, as she was confident it was good for her recovery for her brain to stay active by scrolling on her phone all night. She worked in healthcare as a PA, so in her delusional state, she was supremely overconfident that she knew how to take care of herself, that nothing was wrong. I was in shock upon the breakup. I did not know how to respond or why it was happening. I told her she wasn't well and needed to rest. I told her she wasn't thinking clearly. She was in brain surgery recovery, she couldn't be alone at this time. She was making extremely self-destructive decisions with the arrogance that she knew what she was doing. None of this was rational and she would refuse to speak about it. She became extremely emotionally abusive and toxic, completely irrational, and entirely unstable. She could not afford our 2-bedroom apartment by herself, yet insisted that I leave and she would take over the lease. She barely had any savings and had significant student loans/medical bills incoming. She spent thousands of dollars on trinkets online in only a matter of days. Huge packages of random stuff came to our door multiple times a day. It freaked me out. She was financially ruining us/herself. She became mad at her employer for irrational reasons, and texted coworkers she would not return to work, despite obviously needing the income and insurance for her medical care. She became angry with her medical providers for not giving her meds that she insisted she needed, and was confident she knew more about medicine than them. She cut off her friends and family, and would refuse to speak to anyone in detail about her condition. Her parents were divorced and she already had little contact with either of them, so she was not close to family to begin with, which did not help the situation. She broke up with me yet still acted like nothing happened, alternating between yelling at me for not being there for her and insisting that I leave and I wasn't respecting her needs/listening to her. She started posting the most manic and erratic rants on her new Instagram account, literally hundreds of reels over the course of a single night. She refused to believe anything was wrong and refused to get any serious medical care or evaluations. She simply said just need some time to heal. When I followed her to her routine medical follow-ups, she insisted to the doctors nothing was wrong and she was just going through a hard time. I had to sneak out after the meetings to talk to the providers about her condition, or take the phone from her and speak to them in another room. The doctors said there shouldn't be anything wrong, they didn't touch any part of the brain that would affect personality. A psychologist thought this was just a psychological trauma response. They all said to just wait and see if it gets better. I did not know what to do, or how to get her help. Apparently I just had to wait it out. A few days later, she told me she changed her mind about the breakup, but still talked and acted very abusive towards me and insisted I leave to find another apartment. She said we just need space and won't give any detail other than that. I kept reasoning with her that she couldn't afford our apartment. I asked her if we're not breaking up, why did I need to leave? I told her not to quit her job, but she kept saying she'd be fine, don't worry about her. She wasn't even cleared to drive or lift any weight. It didn't make sense. She refused to talk about why, shutting me down and yelling at me for even asking. I had been staying up every night trying to get her to sleep, and she would become extremely abusive and yell at me if I tried to guide her to bed or try to tell her she wasn't okay. In doing this, I wasn't sleeping or eating or working. I was spending all day on the phone trying to reach out to doctors and friends and family and trying to calm her down. I was malnourished and sleep-deprived, and extremely worried about her well-being. I saw her completely destroying everything we had built together and was scared to see her behave this way. It was clear she was in a full-fledged manic/psychotic episode. She was spending money she didn't have. She spent all day hanging things on the walls and told me she was communicating to me via patterns and hidden messages. It was very scary to hear her talk this way, as she was fine only a few weeks before this. She would treat me like trash and would only be somewhat okay if I played along with her manic delusions. Keep in mind this was after breaking up with me as well, so I was in emotional turmoil on top of worrying about her well-being. She made me support her in her manic behavior, or else I would be punished. She would gaslight me and tell me I was being manipulative if I told her she wasn't okay. I started to lose my own mind dealing with her. Within a few days, things boiled over. I was tired of being abused and treated like shit, despite doing my best to take care of my clearly psychological damaged girlfriend. As I tried to get a bit of sleep, she would wake me up yelling at me to leave and find another apartment, only to change her mind and then tell me I could stay, only to then yell at me for not leaving later in the day. I couldn't win no matter if I listened to her or not. Eventually, I told her I would leave. This broke my heart. I did not want to leave her like this, but she forced me to. She would not listen to any of my pleas and would not listen to anyone about her mental state. I cried and begged, but she just laughed and brushed it off. So I signed another apartment lease. I was still in shock. I knew she wasn't well, but I just needed to get away. I was so worried about her, yet I couldn't bear to be around her anymore. I spent a week moving my stuff out, leaving her pretty much all the furniture as I knew she wasn't well and couldn't afford new stuff. I played along with her delusions until I got my stuff out, because I was afraid she would lock me out or blow up again and do something drastic. I told myself this relationship is over, but in the back of my mind I was hoping maybe she would calm down within a few weeks, and maybe we could figure out what happened, as severe as her actions were. After I moved out, she acted like we were still together. She said we could spend weekends at each other's places. I was in disbelief. She had broken up with me for no reason, made me move out despite us living together for 3 years, treated me like shit the whole time, and now is pretending nothing had happened. We were planning to get married and buy a house before this. I did not see this as some trivial incident. It was basically the end of our relationship. I did not know how to respond. I just knew I needed to get away from the abuse and gaslighting. I spent weeks rebuilding my apartment, as I had to rebuy every bit of furniture that I had left for her. After I moved out, I was struggling between wanting to check in on her and trying to emotionally recover from the incident. She started acting even more erratically, alternating between sending me memes and asking me to watch TV with her, to blocking me on text and saying we need to move on. I found out from a mutual friend that she started seeing someone else from Tinder about 2 weeks after I moved out, and that she was behaving even more manically. She blocked me on everything except email, wouldn't let me get the remainder of my belongings, and sent me an email demanding money from me. Despite me leaving her all my furniture and paying for most things throughout our relationship, she was in school, I had a stable job throughout. I was offended to say the least. How could she break up with me, kick me out of our apartment, start hooking up with someone else, then demand money from me? I owed her nothing. I had given her so much already only to be tossed aside in a fit of mental illness. I completely cut her off after that, extremely angry and confused and hurt at what had just happened. I spent most of that time just trying to take care of my basic physical needs and rebuilding my home that I had left behind. It took me until about November, 2 months after moving out, before the grief and reality of what had just happened hit me. I was completely depressed after that. I started therapy, spent most of my time calling friends and coworkers and having anxiety attacks. I couldn't even stand to be in my new apartment. We had moved to a new city together and now I was completely alone, with almost no friends here. I had spent all my time with her. I struggled to understand why we even broke up, what I did, or if she was okay. I alternated between hating her for her actions and feeling bad for her and wanting her back. I had been through breakups before, but this was such an unusual circumstance due to the medical condition. The only updates I got during this period were from when I checked in with a mutual friend. The friend said that my ex had gotten worse, started hallucinating demons in her bathroom, started hanging out in a witch cult, started believing in wild occult/mystical shit, doing a bunch of drugs, getting mad at friends who tried to check in. It was wild. I remember thinking, wow, I dodged a bullet, glad I got out when I did. I coped by basically pretending the girl I knew was dead, replaced by a psychotic demon who was a completely different person. After I heard these updates, it was easier to just vilify her and pretend like she wasn't there anymore. Right before NYE, about 4 months after, she unblocked me and reached out to talk. Apparently she had become lucid again and started to realize what had happened. She said she'd gotten let go from her job, she threatened many times to quit. She spent tons of money taking trips and buying things and doing whatever manic people do. She wasn't able to pay rent. She didn't have insurance to get follow-up care. She had burned bridges with her closest friends, and had very few people to support her. Basically everything I had tried to prevent from happening, had happened. And she finally acknowledged that she wasn't well and needed care. It was heartbreaking to hear her talk again like she was before the surgery. I felt so bad. I had gotten to the point where I had thought I had started moving on, but to hear her talk like this again and for her to finally realize and acknowledge what had happened, it brought me right back. I told her I couldn't help her, even though I wanted to. I had just spent 4 months trying to recover emotionally and move on, and I couldn't do anything to save her from her fate. I told her she did this to herself and she hurt me, kicked me out, made me leave, and destroyed everything. All she said to that was that she was unwell and that I shouldn't have left. She still blamed me for leaving her, even though she forced me to leave. The last time I spoke with her, she said she was moving back in with her mom across the country where we are both from. It's now February, and although I have come to some level of acceptance of what happened, I am still alone, lost, and confused at how things went down. I feel a combination of grief, guilt, anger, loneliness, depression, and heartbreak. I don't know why our relationship had to end. I don't know if she will get better, if she will continue to have more psychotic episodes, or how she will manage to recover. She treated me so badly, yet I kept telling myself it wasn't her fault. She was a good person before all this. I still have trouble reconciling this. I don't think we will ever be able to get back together again, but in my darkest moments I still fantasize that things will go back to normal, like before the brain surgery. I know this is not possible. She has dug herself into a deep financial hole, she will need medical treatment for the foreseeable future, and she may never be the same person again. She still seems to have some leftover delusional beliefs, and still isn't completely accountable for how things went down. She still thinks that I have some blame in what had all happened, even though I tried everything I could to help. I am trying now to create a new life in the city that we had moved to together, but in the darkness of winter it has been isolating, cold, dark, and hard to move on. I don't have a social circle here, which makes it so much harder. I tell myself I wish I had a regular breakup, so at least I would have clarity and closure on what happened. I can't hate her, I can't blame her, even though I want to. There isn't a simple narrative on why things ended, which causes me to ruminate on if things could have worked out differently. It just blew up in an intense bout of mental illness. Could I have stayed longer if I fought her? Could I have withstood the abuse longer? Would it have changed anything? I don't know if she wants to get back together, and I don't know if I would want to even if she did. I try not to contact her even though I want to. I tell myself I'm glad we weren't married or had kids, because this would have been so much worse. But I still have trouble dealing with the trauma of all this. She didn't deserve this. I didn't deserve this. I feel like the psychosis permanently changed her mind and caused her to believe that we had to end the relationship. I try to forget about it and move on. But I feel the need to post about this. I'm the only person to witness what actually happened in person. I don't know what she tells her friends and family, but this is what happened. I guess I'm looking for any words of encouragement, or anybody who has dealt with similar mental illness. It feels so unfair that it went down in this way.